Hello, I am Salvin Paul Daniel, and me, along with Himani Bausar, is doing our final project on uh, programming for analytics. The title of our project is analyzing and creating an NBA Foster fantasy team, NBA fantasy roster for any particular given year. So I'm not going to details of the README file. You can just read that, understand it. I'm going to explain how the code works. So let's get started. So the first block imports all the required packages and libraries in order to conduct the analysis. So we are using two different APIs. One API for the team statistics data, and the another API for the player statistics data. First, we are doing the analysis on the team statistics data. So this code extracts data from data of the team statistics data, and then converts it from JSON format into the pandas data frame, and selecting only whatever columns are required from the pandas data frame, which are the season, away team, is score, home team, and the score by the home team. And it does the same thing for 2016, 17, and 18, and then it concatenates, and the concatenated data frame is displayed in here. We've created a function which returns as a data frame, which contains the total number of wins per season, total number of home wins and away wins per season, and another data frame which contains the overall home wins and away wins. And this is the pictorial representation of the data that we collected, of the data frame that we made. And this block of code calculates the percentage of the percentage home wins and percentage away wins per season. And this is a plot, a pictorial representation of the percentage home wins and away wins per season. And this is a pie chart that shows the total aggregate home win percentage and aggregate away win percentage. Uh, so coming to the second part of our problem, which is the analysis of player performance. So in order to do that, we need the player statistics data, and that can be obtained from the second API. And this code asks for a user input of which year the user wants to get the analysis done for. So here we can, if you run this block, we can just you can just enter whichever year the player wants, the user wants the data statistics analysis done for. So we just here enter 2017 and just hit enter, and it runs in the back and does all the calculation related to the 2017 data. uh, so so this is the data frame that is converted from the JSON data to the pandas data frame. Then we start doing our analysis of whether there is a relationship between the number of minutes a player plays and the score and the points he gets in that game. So this is the scatter plot that shows the relationship between the number of minutes, which is the independent variable, and the points scored by the player, which is the dependent variable. And in order to fit a linear regression line, we use another code. We use another block of code which fits the linear regression line through the graph. And we are doing this mainly to get the R square value, to check the relevance of the relationship between the dependent and independent variable. And as we can see, the R square value obtained here is 11.3, which is way less than the normal value. And we can therefore say that there does not exist any correlation between the player performance or the number of minutes a player plays, and the score he gets through that amount of play. So coming to the last part of our project, which is to create fantasy NBA team roster, and compare it with the winning team of that particular season. So since we have taken the 2017 data, since in order to create the fantasy team, we need the different aspects of the game. So what are all required for in order to get the total fantasy point is the 2 pointers made, the 3 pointers made, free throws made, assists, rebounds, blocks, steals, turnovers, and all these things we get from the API. And apart from that, we just ignore everything and just take whatever is required. And so after that, we sorted out we sorted out each players according to the to his position, and calculated the top and separated out the top 10 players in each category. So and represented it pictorially. So these are the top 10 scorers. These are the top 10 2-point scorers. These are the top 10 3-point scorers, and so on. These are the top 10 free throw scorers. These are the top 10 rebound catchers. These are the top 10 assists makers and these are the top 10 stealers, and these are the top 10 block makers, and these are the top 10 turnovers. So so the so and so in order to make our fantasy team and in order to take make in order to create the lineup for a fantasy team and the winning team, we had to hardcore the winner for each and every season, since there was no data regarding the winner for the in the API that we are using to get this data. So if it's the year 2016, the winners Cleveland Cavaliers and so on, we hard coded it for 2017 and 2018. So the next block of code is required. It calculates the total fantasy points for every player. So if a player makes a 2 pointer, each and every 2 pointer will account for 2 points. So if he, let's say if he makes 4 2 pointers, he gets a total of 8 fantasy points because of the 2 pointers he made. And that way, like if he gets all the different categories of shots offered, then he'll all of those will be multiplied by its corresponding value, and the total fantasy points will be calculated. And then it is created into a new data frame, and stored, and all these values are stored under the total fantasy points value. So this is just a sample data, and this is the data frame which has a total fantasy points based on the different categories that we mentioned about: the 2 pointers, the 3 pointers, the free throws, the rebounds, the assists, the steals, the blocks, the turnovers, and whatnot. So and then now so in order to create the winning team and the fantasy team, we have to separate out the players from the winning team and the rest of the players. So what we did here, this block, up here, we are taking the data frame 3 will have every player excluding the winning team players, and data frame 4 will have players from the winning team. So, and the winning team was hard coded before, according to the seasons, which the user has inputted. So this block shows sorts the players into according to their positions, and none of these players will be from the winning team. And the same thing is done here, but here it is just for the winning team players and sorted according to their positions. So coming to creating the lineup. So according to the rule of basketball, there should be at least one point guard, one short guard, shooting guard, and one small forward, regardless of the situation. So these three are the first three players are fixed. The next two spots, it is filled on a certain criteria. So let's so the data frame for centers, power forwards, and small forwards are compared in order to fill the next two spots. So if the first player of the centers data frame has a total fantasy point greater than the first player in the power forward data frame, so that the the first center from the centers data frame will occupy the fourth position, or else the fourth position will go to the power forward from the power forward's data frame. And the fifth position will again compare the center, the small forward, and the power forward, and whichever has the highest number of total fantasy points, that player will fetch the fifth position. This code will get you exactly what I just said. And this is the concatenation of all the five players for the starting lineup, and these are all the five players from the winning team that play the finals of the NBA. So, and this is the code for creating the bench lineup for the winning team. And so the bench lineup just has two criteria. that it should not contain any players from the winning team, and it should also satisfy all the conditions the starting lineup has to follow. So this code enables that. And again, concatenating it will give concatenating will it will give this existing data frame. Here the same thing is done for creating the fantasy team starting lineup and the fantasy team bench lineup. So we this here we get the fantasy team starting lineup and the fantasy team bench lineup here. So the last thing we're going to do is comparing the fantasy lineup with fantasy team lineup with the winning team of the NBA. So what we do is calculate the total. We take the cumulative of the total fantasy points of each and every players from the starting lineup of for the fantasy team and the winning team, and compare it with each other. Whichever has the highest number, whichever is greater than the other, will be the better team. So here, as we can see, the fantasy team for the fantasy points for the winning team is in the 14,000s, in the range of 14,000s, and the fantasy point for the fantasy team is in 21,000s. So clearly, the fantasy team created by our code has a better chance of winning if competed against the winning team of the NBA. And yeah, and that concludes our presentation.